Hey, everybody. Let's see.
Good evening, DealMachine.
33 in here. We got Barbara, Mark, Dan, Dean, Joseph. I do notice that the chat and webinar jam is delayed sometimes. So FYI, we might
That's
say
okay.
something.
We've got Knickerbocker here, which reminds me of Dr. Klickenbrocker, the dance instructor in the movie Sing 2, which my kids are loving right now. If you haven't seen it, go see it. It's on Redbox.
Have not seen it on Redbox. What's Red? Like, is that like the? I don't know what Redbox is.
Redbox, they got kiosks outside of most grocery stores, and you can you can rent a movie for like $1.
Like the ones like it used to be like McDonald's and Walmart's and stuff like that, right?
That's right. That's right.
It's been a while since I've used it.
Got my friend Vu here from Augusta. He and I play a lot of pickleball together. Glad to see Vu's here.
Pickleball. I haven't played pickleball yet, but I know it's like catching fire like crazy.
It's a lot of fun, man. You need to get out there.
I would do that. I don't know if I have any friends here that play pickleball. Well, I've got one, and I made fun of him for not being willing to play tennis with me. But maybe I need to.
It's a lot of fun, especially when you start playing with younger people that are really talented. Like Vu's way better than me, but getting people like him that are really, people that were 5'0" tennis players. Those are the people that are fun to play with, right?
Mm-hmm. Good to know. Hey everybody, we'll get started here in just a minute. We got 53 here now. 335 registered. Usually we'll probably hit like 80 to 100 over the course with that number, I would guess. But hope everyone is doing well. I see some names that I'm familiar with as well here. So thanks for being here. Format for the webinar today. Really, we brought up Paul because Paul's had a ton of success as a real estate investor over his whole career, dating 15 plus years back, I think. Has been with DealMachine for about a year.
That's right. We just did our 1 year renewal.
Awesome. So yeah,
April
30th. Yeah, literally 6 days ago then.
That's right.
I'm sure Paul remembers the check, the line item on the screen. The charge went through. But Paul's had a ton of success with us, and so we wanted to bring him in and allow him to kind of just share his story and his tips on like how to be a successful real estate investor, both with DealMachine and I think just also share his story as an investor in general, because I think there's a lot of really good lessons in there that him and I were able to meet. I think it was about a month ago that we sat down and we kind of shared your whole story. And there were a lot of things I really loved that came out of it, of just like that this doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. It takes execution.
Yeah.
It takes working on your skills. You talked a little bit about like the sales training that you went through and practice and what you put your team through. And so we may brush on that in today's call, but I wanted to mention it because I think it was stuff like that stood out to me that's really impactful to bring into this content, because while we try to make it an easy button, there's still skills that you need to develop and there's processes that you need to implement. And I think Paul's story really highlights that really, really well. So I'm excited to share it.
Absolutely. Thank y'all so much for having me. I will say before we get started, and you guys know Josh and Elise because I posted this on Facebook, but I really do have a huge debt of gratitude to you guys because of all that y'all have done for me. You guys were there, and we'll tell my story shortly, but when things weren't going well, and I transitioned into working with y'all, it made a massive difference for me. And so thank you to y'all. Thank you to David. Thank you to Krista Vivieros, Rochelle Wood, all the people, Joy, all the people on your team. I can't thank you enough for helping me scale. So I'll always be grateful.
Absolutely. We appreciate you, and we'll make sure that all of them hear this word too. Krista comes into these occasionally. There's a small chance she's in here actually. So especially since you were going to be on here, I'll make sure she gets the message though.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, I would say let's go ahead and jump in and get started. So again, the goal today, I want Paul to share his story of success, how he's gotten where he's at, and then jump into a little bit about what it looks like with DealMachine. We do have a special offer for people that we put together on the webinar today that I will give to everyone at the end. Specifically, like Paul and I sat down and we're like, what's something that makes sense for for people who are starting out trying to get more deals. Whether you're an existing DealMachine member or you are not an existing DealMachine member, this will be something that you can take advantage of. And I really built this offer uniquely for leveraging Paul's story as like, hey, like if this is the roadmap that you want to follow, if this is what you want to happen in your own business, it's literally the exact tools that Paul's going to talk about that have helped him get to where he's at. So, and a bonus one actually that he doesn't have that we just released. So,
that's right.
we'll see at the end. So, Paul, start with just sharing your story getting into real estate investing. What that looked like.
Yeah, so I was a sophomore at UGA in college, and my granddad, and by the way, my mom is in the chat, Laurie Myers, said this was her father, giving my mom a shout out. Her dad gave me the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I read this book when I was a sophomore in college, and I decided for me, I was always going to invest in real estate for my personal form of retirement. That was just my asset of choice. And I stuck to that ever since. Graduated from college in 2007, so I'm 37 years old. My wife's 38. We got married at 22. She was 23. And I had a 13-year corporate career. I won't bore you with all the details, but the second of the 4 jobs I had, I worked for a staffing and recruiting company called MAU. And that company invested in me to get professional sales training through a company. It's an international company called Sandler Sales Training. You can go check them out. You can subscribe to their YouTube channel. They've got a lot of great content. But through that, I learned how to sell. And my wife and I kind of leapfrogged our careers one after the other. You know, I was a branch manager making $40,000 a year. She was a medical school student making nothing, going into major debt. Eventually, when she graduated from medical school, we actually had $100,000 in student loans. Then she got a job as a pediatric resident for 3 years, making 45 to 50. And then I took that role in sales, and I had the opportunity to earn commission on top of the salary. And then, you know, she got out of residency and started making money as a part-time pediatrician. And then again, we kind of leapfrog careers, and little by little, you know, we finally got into the last 6 or 7 years of our 13-year career where we both started making 6 figures. And that was huge because while I was in college, I did a Crown Financial Bible study by guys named Larry Burkett and Ron Blue. And I just learned about budgeting, and I started living on a budget. And then once we got married, we both started living on a budget. And it was really simple. It was just an Excel. And then now we use Dave Ramsey's Every Dollar software, which I love. It's wonderful. But so that's kind of how we got started. Then I started really buying. I bought my first rental in October of 2007, right after I had moved back to Augusta and we got married. And ultimately, I read this book, actually, The Millionaire Real Estate Investor by Gary Keller. And in that book, you guys can write this down for when you purchase the book later, but page 222, he talks about the acquisition model of the millionaire real estate investor. And he says in it, he identifies what is the best path, you know, kind of the highest and best use for real estate. And if you're just looking to generate cash, it's buying and flipping homes. But if you're looking to create cash flow and equity, it's buying and holding rentals. So when I read that, and I had a mentor who owned over 100 homes, and he basically told me, you need to just be a buy and hold landlord, because that's where you'll really build wealth. And I was 22. I didn't know anything. All I had was book knowledge at that point. So I said, why not? Lucky for me, 2009 hit, right? The recession set in, and I just started buying 1 to 2 rentals a year and using, again, I was kind of like the textbook buy and hold investor. I bought B-class working class homes, 3-bedroom, 2-bath brick ranches in fairly nice areas. I was buying them for 75 to 100 grand. Today they're worth 200 grand. And I cash flowed the down payments. You know, my wife and I lived off one salary. We saved, over this 13 years, we saved about 53% of our income. So we were living off very little, $3,000 to $4,000 a month, investing the rest. We eventually paid off all our student loans, and I self-managed and self-leased all my rentals for the first 10 years. And that was a great learning experience for me to understand how leasing and property management work. But it wasn't long before we had a few handfuls of rentals that were all generating $100, $200, $300, $400 a month in cash flow. And those properties eventually, when the recession ended 2013, 2014, those properties over the next 5, 7, 10, or 8 years appreciated pretty dramatically. And so that's kind of how we got started in a nutshell.
That's awesome. I love some notes in there for that. I really like the discipline and the budgeting. You can make this happen regardless, and discipline in your own budgeting is a start to it. Yeah. How did you just so I remember too? How did you find most of those deals? Was this on market? I mean, if it was during that downturn,
yeah,
market was a lot cheap. Market was very different than today.
Oh, totally different. Yeah, that's why I hesitate to even share too much. But it was all on market. It was all bank-owned foreclosures. I specialized in a niche called VA foreclosures, so properties that had been owned by a military serviceman or woman. They put 0% down. They did the VA loan thing. Then they got orders shipped to another military base. They had no equity, so their property got foreclosed on. The VA took it back from the bank, and then I would buy the property from the VA. And so they had this financing program called VA Vendy financing, and I could buy get as many mortgages as I want, put 5% down, 45% or under debt to income ratio, no PMI, no appraisal. So I just started stacking up rentals one by one. Didn't know what flipping was, didn't know what wholesaling was. It was all about, hey, how can I keep buying rentals? And it was all one at a time, Josh. It was like, I'm going to buy it, fix it up, rent it out. There was no burring. There was no refinancing. It was all just purchase mortgage from the beginning and then move on to the next one. And so I stacked up, again, a couple handfuls of rentals that ultimately, appreciated significantly in value. And I'm thankful that we made those sacrifices early on in our marriage.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome and interesting. I wasn't aware of any programs like that. I'm assuming they're not as applicable in today's market. We'll see what happens over the next 4 or 5 years.
That's right.
So I know from there you were like, I want to go faster. I want more deals. I want to get more aggressive.
Yep.
So you started to explore that, and I know you started to look like, how do I go direct to seller? But that didn't look as great at the beginning. Like, what did that look like?
So I'm glad you just triggered something in my mind. So part of my story is actually 2018, 2019. Or maybe it was 2020. Just 2020, I bought like 6 or 7 properties. I was going to flip them, but I was buying from wholesalers, and I got tired of paying. Basically, I looked back at a year. I did a little spreadsheet, and I was like, what am I into these properties for at the end of the day? And I was into all of them at like 80 cents on the dollar. And I was like, man, I don't know. Like, I think there's probably a better way to do this. Why don't I become the wholesaler? Well, I can market directly to sellers, and quite frankly, I've got sales training, so I could probably do well in B2C sales. Why not give that a shot? So that's kind of how I started doing my first direct to seller marketing. And it was Q2 and Q3 of 2020. I kind of helped my wife wind down. She had a pediatric practice for 3 years. She wanted to stay at home full time, had some medical issues that she wanted to stay home for. And so I kind of looked back and I thought, I guess I kind of had an epiphany. I was like, I love real estate investing. I know that. And I love sales. So if you love those two things, the perfect combination of those two skill sets is ultimately wholesaling. Because wholesaling is ultimately any wholesaler that owns a wholesaling business. And I saw a question earlier from a gentleman about, is it a sustainable business? I totally think it is. But it is a sales business. It is a selling company. Barbara, thanks for your question. I'm in Augusta, Georgia. I should have mentioned that. I do have a Masters polo on and a Masters tumbler, so that way you can remember Augusta, Georgia. So I ultimately realized that kind of what the Lord was doing in my life, he was calling me out of Paul Myers, the successful real estate investor, Paul Myers, the successful salesperson, to being a sales leader and leading others, and then also, being a business owner and an entrepreneur. So that's when I launched my company, Myers House Buyers. And I launched in November of 2020. So that's a year and a half ago. And it was really hard. So I wrote down some numbers for you guys. October 30th, 2020, I spent my first $6,000 on marketing. I mailed 2,000 letters with a company called Print Centers, but I think they were called Yellow Letters HQ at the time. And I did that for 3 months. So it was 2,000 letters a month for 3 months. Then on January 7th of 2021, a couple months later, I spent another $1,215. Then on February 10th, 2021, I spent another $7,500. So I'm out of pocket just under 15 grand in the hole. And those entire 5 months, November 1st to March 31st of 2021, I didn't do a single deal. And it was very hard, very discouraging. I had one team member, he was a lead manager, but he was commission only. So he and I were just kind of in it together. We were in the slums together.
Was he there through all those slums of 4 months of not getting paid as the lead manager?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, he really wanted to hire me to do some real estate investment coaching with him. His name is Andre, wonderful guy. I knew him from church. And so I gave him a lot of coaching for free because I had spent 13 years at that point buying rentals. And that's what he was wanting to learn about. How do I help, invest in rentals? So anyway, so when I met DealMachine, essentially I was at rock bottom.
It was not good. I'm 15K deep. And that's I think that's the scary story for a lot of people as they get into investing and they hear what to get started with. It's David's story, similar to like he wasted a bunch of money on like big like absentee owner lists and just like generic marketing that everyone else did. And it can feel intimidating when you're like, I only got 5,000 to get started. To hear 15K deep with no results, it's a scary thing to think about.
It is. It definitely takes courage to be an entrepreneur, but I had faith. I had done a little bit of direct to seller marketing like in 2016, 5 years earlier when I worked, when I had a corporate job. And I did 2 wholesale deals during that time. So I knew there was an opportunity. I knew that I just needed to be consistent. And I was building a pipeline. I was having conversations with sellers and I was tracking leads in my CRM, which was Podio. And I was building a little bit of a pipeline, but I'll tell you where it all changed for me. I don't think I've told either of y'all this story, but I went into my weekly sales training with a friend of mine. His name is Victor. And, I told him what I'd dropped 15 grand on marketing over the last 5 months. And he was like, Paul, and we had this relationship and I had enough intellectual humility, I guess, to hear it from him at the time by God's grace. And he said, I bet if you abandoned, he didn't know what DealMachine was, nor did I. He said, I bet if you abandoned your high equity list and you just drove around your city in Augusta and you just looked at, you just found distressed properties, you could mail those directly, handwrite the letters, skip trace and cold call the sellers and do better than you're doing now, which of course that was true because I hadn't done any revenue, right? So it wasn't that much of a clairvoyant prediction, but that's what he said. And I was at a low point that where I was, who was I to question his suggestion? And by the way, he was a landlord. He owned a few handfuls of rentals too. So he kind of smacked me upside the head. And then you want to just go into what I did next, how I started with DealMachine?
Yeah, I think that's the best transition, is like, because you kind of, the DealMachine situation evolved over time, and we'll get to that as you added the tools. But yeah, it's so you find DealMachine, or you stumble into DealMachine while you're driving, and I forget that part of the story, but yeah, let's go from there.
So the first thing I did, and I may share my screen here if that's possible.
Yeah, you should be able to. Oh,
and I'm going to show Google Maps. I'm just going to show you guys what I did because it's really simple. But let me do a check. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, great. So what I did was I went into Google Maps and I found some of the major thoroughfares in my city. Like here's one on Columbia Road. Okay. And I basically, we got an infinity screen there. I wrote down instructions for a driver as if that driver was a 16-year-old who had just gotten their driver's license. And, like if they get a job at McDonald's, all the systems and processes are lined out so they know exactly what to do. That's kind of how I wanted to structure driving for dollars. So I pulled up Google Maps And I started where I had been buying rentals for the last 15 years. And I identified the major thoroughfare, the major highway. So here's an example. Here's Columbia Road, okay? And then off of Columbia Road, you have a subdivision right here called Woodland Park. And here's another subdivision called Holiday Park. And you turn on to Buckboard Drive and Holiday Drive to get into those subdivisions. And there's a subdivision sign right about here where you can see, you know, exactly the name of the subdivision, right? So what I did was I went through Augusta and I labeled, I split up, let me turn off screen share. I split up my entire metropolitan statistical area. So the MSA for Augusta, there's about 400,000 people. It's nowhere near as big as Indianapolis. And I split that up. I went out a 30-mile radius. We got about 400,000 people. And then I identified 222 subdivisions, 406 streets, and then 15 quadrants. So a subdivision is just a subdivision, just like you would think. A street would be a street off of a major thoroughfare, but it's just a one-off street with a dead-end cul-de-sac, and there's no actual subdivision sign, and it's not an actual established subdivision. And then quadrants are just blocks of area where you have certain amounts of homes, but it's not in an actual subdivision. So I split all the CSRA, my Central Savannah River area, into that. And then I committed to drive Monday through Friday, 3:30 to 5:30. So just 2 hours a day. And then I had two friends, Zach and Andrew, and they were willing to kind of help me by driving on Saturday, every other Saturday for 4 to 8 hours. So just did this with a couple of my friends they were really interested in real estate investing. They just did it because they were my friends. Those were my first drivers. And I paid them hourly, of course, and I paid them a mileage reimbursement, whatever the IRS had at the time. And that's kind of how we got started. It took us like a month to get through 2 of the 13 zip codes that we started with. But eventually we covered all 13 zip codes in my MSA. And we ultimately added it was about 2,300 leads that were distressed properties. Mm-hmm. And I gave them a list of like 20 signs of distress. You guys could go watch any YouTube video that DealMachine does, and they'll give you the tags for distress. And that's ultimately how I got started with DealMachine. We used the app. It was super simple. It was very user friendly. It showed you where you had driven. So all you needed to do was make that turn off the major thoroughfare, and then DealMachine, you know, took you through the rest very clearly so that you didn't backtrack, which I loved. And then after you finished one subdivision, you got back on the major thoroughfare and pulled up on the next subdivision. And that was pretty much it.
That's awesome. And the, yeah, I love how uniform you were in the approach. And I think that there's one thing I would say is it's really helpful to know like how much you want to cover. It's also, it's not required to start with that much detail too. I think a lot of people overthink sometimes. And like you said, you kind of just started, right. Here's where my rentals are. So that it can be as simple as that too. But I think especially as you get better and as you want to cover your entire market, you do want to have kind of like a quadrant based process of knowing I'm going to make sure I hit everything, and the route tracking components obviously help with that a lot. We have an area planning tool in development that you'll actually be able to schedule out not just routes to target properties, but actual geographies, and say that geography is going to be driven next week by this driver, and we'll make sure to get that area. So it's the right way to go about planning for sure, especially when you have team members too. I think that's the biggest thing. Like you said, if you're going to be the McDonald's of this process, you got to have the process.
That's right. And I'll show you, I'll just share my screen one more time, and I'll show you one thing that I had where I mapped it out. So this is a Google Doc in our Google Drive. So I identified the city, which was one of the 11 zip codes. And then I put the number of subdivisions and number of roads. And then here you can see I've got the major thoroughfare followed by the the subdivision name, followed by the street that you would turn off of. And so I pretty much just mapped it all out from my office. And then I knew I could pretty much just hand that sheet over to a driver and say, hey man, go drive these 45 subdivisions in Martinez and check them off one by one when you get done And it was just kind of an easy, systematic way to go about it. So yeah, and it was 2,300 leads that we added when we did. That was when we had driven all 13 zip codes over the first. It took us, because myself and Andrew and Zach drove for the first month or two, and then we brought on a driver and he worked part-time. It was about 20 hours a week. His name was Hamilton, and he drove the remaining 4. It took him like 3 months or so to drive the rest of the zip codes. And then you add all that together, we found about 2,300 distressed homes.
Okay.
The moment we found them, we added them to DealMachine, so they started getting postcards.
Right.
From that.
Awesome. And so that actually is a good, I think, follow-up to that. Well, I guess 2 things. I guess, yeah, talk about the marketing process. And then because I have a slide of just like the deals that you got and kind of some of the numbers attached to them. But yeah, talk about like kind of your belief in the best marketing process that works and also easy to follow.
Yeah, well, another thing I love about DealMachine is the templates within the website. So we picked 2 simple templates, and actually you can see them over my left shoulder here. So I'll just grab a few. But we basically only use 2 templates. We use the "Is This Your Property" postcard, and it's just the picture of the property on the front, contact information on the back with a shot of my professional headshot. And then this is the second template. It's just, I forget what it's called. It's called.
That's the block template. The
block template. Yes. Elise loves it. She loves the block. So that we use that one too. And I just send postcards once a month for 6 months. And then that marketing is complete is the status it changes to in DealMachine. So yeah, that's kind of ultimately, I had a friend of mine that was working for me on a contract basis, and she helped me. She's a better marketing mind than I am. So she helped me kind of set up all the templates, choose templates, and then set up the campaigns. And once we had the campaigns, my drivers could add properties into different campaigns. If it was corporate owned, then we added them into a certain campaign that was just basically a solicitation to add them onto our cash buyer list as investors, because we didn't want to try and buy their properties. And if it was, owner occupant owned, or if it was absentee owned, then they went into a different campaign, which allowed them to get, "Is this your property? Would you have any interest in selling for the next?" And they would get postcards once a month for the next 6 months.
Gotcha. That's all. I love diversifying a little bit and keeping it simple too. Like you don't need like a custom one for every single property, like or like to get super detailed in it. But splitting, I think, corporate owns in particular and mentioning that is a really powerful thing. Just because you mentioned it, and it's a kind of support like how important that follow-up marketing is. This is some data that we looked across all of the deals in DealMachine that have ever been done that we know about. And looked at how much marketing had been done to those deals when they came in. And what we found was only about 15% of the deals that have come in to DealMachine members from driving for dollars come after the first postcard. Right. And when you get to the third postcard, it's about 47% of the deals that have come in come sometime in the first 3 postcards.
I believe that.
And the critical thing to realize, and this is, I bring this up because it's so important for beginners who feel like I added 100 properties and I sent everyone a postcard and nothing happened. It's, if you stop there, you've probably already done the work where deals are. You've just stopped mailing them. So the better way to look at this is 84% of your outcome of your results and the deals that you found driving. If you stop after 1 postcard, you're saying, I don't want to take 84% of my results. I've done the work, but I don't want to get 84% of the outcome. Yeah. And then the same thing for after third. You're still leaving 53% of your results on the table if you stop marketing after the third postcard. So It's just a matter of consistency. Like it matters so much. And I just like to bring it up and pull some of the stats on this, because this is what we see and preach over and over again. And Paul's found this to a T. And I think recently Paul became the lead. Was it February you sent the most mail through DealMachine that we'd ever sent?
Yeah, in February, we sent 57,118 postcards. And according to Krista, this is not my numbers.
According to
She
Krista.
said we were #1 in the nation for highest volume of postcards. So we love that, man. We're celebrating that internally. Let's go.
I love it. I'll double check with Krista, but I don't think she'd lie. So
Yeah.
So this is the marketing process that you followed. You got a little bit unique with like the corporate owns versus the rest of the properties. But then I'd love to talk a little bit about the deals that you got along the way.
Sure. Yeah. So the very first deal we did, I don't know, man. I think it was just God's favor, honestly. But deal #1 on your screen was a duplex right off of our major drag in our city. It's called Washington Road. And I personally added this property. I was driving by it, and I was driving by it, and I was like, man, this property is not distressed. Like, it literally looked like someone had pressure washed the vinyl siding yesterday. I mean, that's how good it looked. But I just thought, it's a great area. It's very central in Augusta, and it's a duplex. So why shouldn't I just give it a shot? So I added that property. Sure enough, this was one on your former screen, the 15% that respond after the first postcard. And quite frankly, to follow up on your last screenshot, Josh, or your last PowerPoint slide, I've seen it all. Some people are on the first, like 15%. That's probably true. Some people are third and fourth, 40%. That's 47%. That's probably true. And then I have had some people that literally said, this is the 6th postcard you've sent me, which I knew was the last one. And I decided to finally call you. So we just get it all. I'm never going to figure out the perfect recipe, but I think once a month for 6 months is good enough for now.
I think, Yep. I think that's the easy button. And then you kind of can go back to it, like let them sit 6 months. And then if they still haven't sold, you run another 2 or 3 to them and stuff like that. That's how I would recommend doing it.
That's right. So DealMachine is super easy though, because once you just change the once you add a lead from your app and take the picture from your car, you have an updated picture in there, and then they're automatically going to get a postcard for the next 6 months. So at that point, all you need to do, for those of you that are on this call that are beginners, all you have to do is set up a CallRail phone number with callrail.com. They can take your inbound call right there and leave a voicemail, and you can call them back. But anyway, deal #1, 81-year-old gentleman, extremely nice, did not need to sell whatsoever. He owned 6 properties. All of them were paid for. He sold the property to me for 2 reasons. One, this was his only multifamily. It was a duplex. So he had to come cut the grass, and he did not like that.
Okay.
He did not like having to cut the grass. And the second thing was he had evicted a tenant on the left side, and he had some problems with the judge at the eviction hearing getting that tenant actually out of the property. I think the judge was just, on that particular morning, was tenant favorable. So those are 2 reasons why I pulled up. I met with him. He called me right off the first postcard, and not all deals work like this, but for me, this deal was a home run. I bought it he wanted 90. I think I offered him the low 70s. We settled at 82. We did the contract on the hood of my car right outside, right the first time I looked at the property. So I bought it. This one, I had an equity line on some of my other rentals, and I knew that this was a really good opportunity. So I paid cash for it, which was 82 grand. Spent 10,000 to renovate the left side. Oh, the third reason he wanted to sell it to me was the right side was occupied by a disabled lady that had a service dog, and he didn't want her to be disrupted at all. In fact, he would not allow me to do any type of walkthrough on the left side. He's like, you can look at it today, and that is the last time you're going to get to look at it, and you can't come back. This is the end of your due diligence. He was almost treating me the way we treat our cash buyers.
You've probably been through it a time or 2, I would guess, maybe.
That's right. Yeah, he was a veteran guy, so he was just kind of looking to consolidate his portfolio and not have to cut the grass over there. But I kept his tenant on the right side. She's still there to this day. And ultimately, people want to know the numbers. I bought it for 82, put 10 into it. So I was into it for 92 plus maybe $1,000 in closing costs. And then I did BRRRR this property, which that stands for buying something and then renovating it. I renovated just the left side. Then I rented it out. The left side, I think I got $950, and then I refinanced the property. So I got it appraised, and a commercial lender lent me. It appraised for $145, and I borrowed 75% of that, or 70%, I think. It's about $101,000 that my mortgage ended up being. So yeah, there it is. It's on the screen. I'm so sorry. So I had an equity position of about 53 grand, and cash flow was really good, $565 a month. That's the rent of both sides, $950 plus about $650, minus the mortgage payment, which was about $650 a month or so, plus taxes and insurance. So my cash was about $565. So that was deal number one.
That's all. I mean, a great home run. It is always nice to get the easy deal early on too. Doesn't work out like you said every time. We've got some people who have got a deal in their free trial, and then some who are like, you know what, I got it out for 6 months, and then months 6 through 12, I did like 20 deals. Like for 6 months, they did none. It can vary, and there's a lot.
Yeah, I did,
but I love this.
The first 15 grand that I sunk into direct seller marketing, I was building a pipeline, and I did close deals off of that eventually. It's just, it took time. And then right when I started with DealMachine, I got that first deal, and then I got several after that. And I'm happy to talk about any of the ones you got on the screen.
Yeah, I think in the interest of time, I guess like any highlights or specifically of like those next few deals. And I guess too, maybe any highlights there, and then talk about, because we've gone from driving for dollars with you to now we have like mail sequences, I know, and then we added list builder. So talk, I guess, a little bit about that process. Like you kind of got to the point where you're like, you know what, I'm doubling down. Let's go. And so what did that look like for you? Yeah,
I'll tell you about, one or two more deals, and then I'll walk you through how we ended up scaling with DealMachine, because I'm sure that's what a lot of the attendees tonight want to hear about. So deal number 2, I bought from a lady that wanted to move about 45 minutes west of Augusta to the Thompson, Washington area. Her and her husband built their dream home for like $400,000 out there in the country. And she had this old home that they used to live in. They'd already built their retirement home. They didn't want to deal with this home anymore. They wanted speed and convenience, right? That's ultimately our tagline. We provide speed and convenience in exchange for a discount on the home, and we have to buy the home at a discount to make a profit. So that property we bought for $109,000, and I did sell that through a double closing to a cash buyer that was repped by a real estate agent, and then we did make $40,000 on that one. And then it's kind of funny, that same lady called me back, and that was deal number 4. She sold us another property which her husband inherited from his father who had passed away. So that was cool to be able to kind of do multiple deals with the same seller. But again, they just wanted speed and convenience. I think a lot of people that aren't familiar with the world of wholesaling don't understand how important that is to sellers. But that's ultimately what our business is built off of. It's providing that speed and convenience. So, and then deal 5, I will just say one little thing. I remember that was on Mulberry Creek Drive in Evans. That was an interesting one. We actually sold it for $185. That's a typo that I mistyped, so I apologize for that. But that gentleman, it's kind of funny. He actually said, I know you've driven by my house because you had there was a big hedge in front of his house that was missing, and our picture showed that. So he called us because I've gotten a lot of postcards, but I know you drove by my house because this hedge is completely missing from your picture. And it was a divorce situation. He had a lot of bad memories in the home, wanted to sell, and a tree had fallen on the back right corner, totally crushed the master bath. And so he got a new roof and he got a new HVAC, but he never replaced the sheetrock in the master bathroom. Like you could see straight up through the ceiling to the rafters. So it was kind of some property distress there, but not a lot. And that one's one I really regret not keeping for myself. But anyway, we sold it and went along. So
my first flip, I massively regret not keeping because it probably is worth $150,000 more today than when I sold it. It would have cash flowed like $300 or $400 at the time. It was the definition of the best bird deal ever. And I just I was so
Right.
gung ho on I want to go flip it. I want to get a flip under my belt. And it was just, if I was more disciplined today, it wouldn't have done it. One thing before we jump on that I really love that you're saying on a couple of these, because some really frequent questions that we get with new investors is, well, how much distress? I'm looking for the houses that are vacant, that are run down, that no one would want to step into, right? And the reality is the answer is no. Because one, there's just very few of those properties. And two, the fact that the property has gotten that far along the way is actually almost a red flag that there's something else going on with the owner, where maybe they can't sell it, or they just are stubborn and really have no desire to sell it. It's not that I wouldn't add those too. I'd still add them, but that's not your bar. Your bar is, what are the unique indicators that looks like for some reason they're just not taking great care of it. There's not care given to the house is your indicator that you're looking for. And that has been a big mindset shift for a lot of people that I've spoken with that has led to a lot of good outcomes. I'll tell you, with the flip that I just mentioned, I added it because I drove by January 3rd of 2018 and there were Halloween decorations on it. I was like, 4 months ago or 3 months ago, this person cared enough about their house to decorate for Halloween, but we've since gone through Thanksgiving and Christmas and she didn't remove that. Yeah. And it was a relationship change issue. I don't think it was divorce technically. And she was going through it. She decided she wanted to move home. And so you're looking for signals of life changes and just lack of care and time to give to the property. It does not have to be the highest threshold of distress in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. We've bought properties that didn't need a lot, and they were in really good condition, but because they were tenant occupied, and the tenant took great care of the property. The landlord was not a slumlord, handled maintenance requests in a timely fashion, but, we basically sold those properties as turnkey deals to investors or hedge funds that wanted the deal. So yeah, it's not always a distressed property. And to answer Barbara's question about the cheap prices here in Augusta, yeah, we do have a low cost of living, no doubt about it. My average rental that I own is worth about $175,000 and rents for about $1,300 to $1,400 a month. So that's kind of the target deal for us here. So I'll share with you guys a little bit about how I expanded with DealMachine. If you want me to share that, Josh, that helps.
Yeah, I love that next. Yep.
Yeah. So I did that through a couple ways, and I'll kind of walk you guys through how that progressed over time. So initially I started out with what John Curtis just signed up for, the free 7-day trial, because you guys know, I'm a frugal guy. You heard how much I budget and whatnot. So that's how I started.
I'll vouch. I've seen the spreadsheets. Very, very detailed, more detailed than a lot of investors I stumble across.
That's right. So as I did deals, I segregated, I followed the book Profit First, which you could go get by Mike Michalowicz, or there's a sequel to it called Profit First for Real Estate Investing by David Richter.
Yep.
And in that book, he just says take 25, depending on your size of your gross revenue. Well, ultimately what we did was we took 25% profit, 25% operating expenses, 25% to marketing, and 25% for taxes. So every time we had 5 checking accounts, one was called the income account. And when money came into that account, we split 25, 25, 25, 25 into the 4 other accounts. So as I started doing my first deals in April of 2021, if you're following my calendar of when we started doing our first deals, I would segregate that money out. So the money would grow. And of course, money sitting in a checking account does not ultimately help me at all scale my business. It doesn't help me hire people. So I was trying to get that money back out in the form of marketing. So first of all, I'll kind of give some props to the customer service reps I had, which were like my concierge for real estate. And that was initially Rochelle Wood, and then now it's currently Krista Vivieros. Both phenomenal women, great professionals, did an awesome job. They were after me for quarterly reviews, so they would proactively reach out to me and set up 90-day reviews, which I really appreciated, because I was running a business, right? I mean, I was thinking about a lot of other things and like personnel, and am I going to run out of money and all those things. So had a phenomenal relationship with them. They had great hearts of servants. They really cared about my business and my success. And they also gave me, I wrote this down, they gave me updates on what DealMachine was doing corporately. So DealMachine would come up with a new technology like virtual driving for dollars or whatever. DealMachine is always innovating as a company, which I love. And so they would brief me on those technological updates every quarter when I got on a call with them. That was extremely helpful to me because I felt like I didn't have to monitor Elise's YouTube videos. Elise, I still love your YouTube videos.
Elise is like, I put these out there so it's easy, right?
This is the last call I'm ever going to get to do. Elise is going to hate me after this. But no, seriously, it was just so user-friendly and easy because I'd hop on a call with them 30 minutes every 90 days, and bada bing, bada boom, they'd catch me up on what the latest things that DealMachine had was. So I mentioned my mail sequence once a month for 6 months. The first add-on service that I added on with DealMachine, and you guys should write this down, was Street Pick. And basically the way I looked at it was it made sense to me because it was cheaper than having a driver drive everywhere. And there's nothing wrong with doing that, but I live in such a small MSA that once we've driven everything, you kind of got to wait 6 months to drive everything again, at least. So I added Street Pick, and that was kind of that just made sense. And then the second thing, well, before I talk about List Builder, I will say I upgraded my membership from the basic straight into the elite level. I forget what it was called at the time, but I went straight to the elite, which cost me, can I say this? Well, it was like $3,000 a year.
Yep, $3,000
something,
a year.
right? And plus an onboarding fee, which I think was about $1,000. So I upgraded into that, and the reason why I did that is because I got a discount on my price per postcards. Because again, I transitioned from using that other mail house to using DealMachine for all my postcards. And again, Elise was super helpful at explaining that, hey, you might as well just move to Elite, spend the $3,000 plus the onboarding fee, drop $4,000 because you're going to drop your postcard cost from, I'm just going to make up some numbers, 55 cents to 49 cents. It was something like that.
He made up the actual numbers, everybody, just FYI.
Okay, those are the actual numbers. I got it right. Okay. So on the basic package, you're going to spend 55 cents a postcard. You upgrade to Elite, you're going to drop to 49 cents. So just sit there and bust out a calculator on your iPhone, 6 cents per postcard in savings.
I think it's like $2,500 a month. It pays for itself around $2,500 a month.
Yes, that's right. So I upgraded to Elite, and then I added on the List Builder function. So I was paying a company probably a lot of people are familiar with called PropStream for lists. And ultimately I added List Builder on. The cost of that was $2,000 a year, roughly. You guys correct me if I'm wrong. And
there's a couple
say again.
There's a couple variables there to know exactly.
Okay, so don't take that as the gospel truth. It could be more. But ultimately, at this point, I had such a love for DealMachine in my heart that I actually spent more to add this on than I was able to get it through PropStream. But at that point, I sat down with my acquisitions manager, Zach, and I said, man, Hallie, I got to be honest. I think we should just consolidate everything under the DealMachine umbrella because they're a cutting edge company. They're always coming out with new stuff. We wouldn't have to log into PropStream. It's just, why not have it all synced up under the same umbrella? And so we made that decision too, to add on that service. And again, this all happened over the entire 12-month calendar of 2021. So if you're wanting to know the timeline, I can't give you specific dates, but ultimately we basically added everything on throughout that calendar year.
I love that. And I think you basically have like everything that we offer now today too.
Yeah.
On your plan outside of comps, which we talked about earlier.
Right.
You haven't yet pulled any. Have you pulled any lists with the MLS data that we have now?
I haven't yet, but that also is because I'm a licensed agent and I pay MLS dues. So, and I have one licensed assistant that helps me as an acquisitions manager in a new division we started. So, for me, that wasn't as big an add-on as it might be for the majority of people watching that they're not agents, they don't have MLS access, and it probably would be a benefit to them.
Yep. Yeah, that's a great call. If you're an agent, you have a lot of the data available. At the end of this, I'll just briefly show what the comps setup looks like, because I think it's really cool and really, really fast. Look at Nick on here. Hey, Nick. Nick Rogosinski is also a long-term DealMachine Elite member as well. So glad you're here, Nick.
Good to have you.
So I think, again, I promised everyone that we would do an offer, and I think it's worth sticking to the end here. I guess before I jump into that, any kind of like final words from you on like what you would advise someone who's usually in this stage. We've got a little bit of people like who kind of span the experience spectrum, but usually I find this is 50 to 70% people who are pre-first deal or they've done a deal. What would you tell the people in those scenarios?
Yeah, I spent hours preparing for tonight. I got 8 things, but you better give these people a good offer, Josh, because I was having dinner with my wife and another couple, and it was Cinco de Mayo, and they're about to bring out the margaritas, and I left to come here for this. So it better be a sick offer. These people are missing out on margaritas all across the nation and Mexican restaurants all across the nation. That better be a good deal.
I forgot about it. I need to go get margaritas after this. You just gave me my next plan for the rest of the night. I was going to be productive too.
Yes, you do owe me a margarita, at least. I appreciate that. All right, I'm going to give you guys 8 things for that I think would help you. Number 1, a couple of these are more emotional encouragements, but I would just say, number 1, every expert was once a beginner, just like myself. So be patient with yourself. Don't beat yourself up too early, especially when you're going through that valley of 5 months of no income. Second thing, trust the process and just prepare yourself mentally that you might not get your first deal for the first 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. The first deal might come on month 6. Just prepare yourself for that mentally. I wish someone had told me that back when I got started. And a good book to encourage you in regards to that is one of my mentors, Dan Sullivan, wrote a book called The Gap and the Gain. That's an example of living your life in the gain of, hey man, I know if I just trust the process and put in the effort, eventually it'll pay off. Number 3, take massive imperfect action. I didn't know what I was doing. I worked the best I could to create that geographical breakdown of my market. It wasn't rocket science. I showed it to you. Be the first driver. Learn how to use the app, and then have some friends help you, and that kind of will get you started. Number 4, keep overhead extremely low. I didn't have an office. I had no overhead except my technological commitments, which again, I told you, Podio, CallRail, these things were not expensive. DealMachine was not expensive. So keep your overhead low, and you can't lose if you do that. Number 5, use Podio as a CRM to track your leads. I spend about $24 a month on Podio, super cheap. Number 5, get CallRail to receive your inbound phone calls and put that phone number on your postcards. Super simple. All you need is one phone number. I don't know the current cost of CallRail, but I budget like $100 a month. That's number 6. Number 7, use DealMachine to scale your mailers. So after you've done your first, second, third, fourth deal, go back to DealMachine, upgrade your membership from wherever you started up into the elite when it makes sense financially based on your postcard volume. DealMachine will scale with you. They scaled with me. And that's probably, if I had to say, the one thing I love looking back on my relationship with DealMachine, the one thing I love most is that they've scaled with me. And they've given me the metrics too, so I know how many postcards I'm sending. I love going into DealMachine, clicking on the calendar. I could pick any date range I want and know exactly how many postcards I've sent if it was a date in the past, or how many I'm projected to send if it's a date range in the future. And I can do that in 30 seconds or less. So use DealMachine to scale. And then number 8, implement profit first from day one. And then I'm gonna give you a bonus on number 9, partner with established wholesalers. I wish I had done this when I started, but I did a deal with a guy. Now he works for me. He brought his uncle's neighbor needed to sell. He was an agent. He could have listed the property, but it needed a fairly decent amount of cosmetic work, and the seller needed to literally buy a lot and a mobile home the same day he was closing. He was never going to be able to make it work. So we bought that property. We made $11,000 on it. We bought it for, I don't know, 88, sold it for 99. And we split that fee, $11,000 with that gentleman. He's a licensed agent, so we could pay him. It was perfectly legal. But he got a check for $5,500. It was a game changer for him. So I would say if you're virtually wholesaling, find out and you're looking at Augusta deals, find the wholesalers like myself that have the cash buyer lists with 1,600 people, and they can help you on the dispo side. You get the signed contract, and then they can help you sell that signed contract. I was trying to think. Or if you're in your market and you're driving for dollars, like most of the people in here will be doing, and you don't have a cash buyer list, just partner with someone that has a big cash buyer list and sell your deals through them. I mean, we do JV splits, 50-50 splits. So anyone that wants to do a deal in Augusta that brings us in distressed property and a signed contract with the seller, we split that 50-50. So it's really a great way to get started is the JV. So again, summarizing all those for Jamal. Number one, be patient with yourself. We were all beginners at one time. Number two, trust the process and prepare yourself mentally. That'll take you a while to do your first deal. Number three, take massive and perfect action. I gave an example of that by breaking down my city geographically for my driver. Number four, keep your overhead extremely low. Number five, use Podio as your CRM, $24 a month. Number six, call rail to track inbound phone calls. Number seven, use DealMachine. They will scale with you. So no matter how big you want to get, they can handle that. Number seven, implement profit first. And number eight, just do JV deals. Even if you don't, sorry, my alarm's going off. Do JV deals to get started. That way, all you need to focus on is marketing through DealMachine and meeting with the seller and getting a signed contract at a decent price. Then you can hand off the signed contract to another local wholesaler, and then they'll find the buyer for it.
Love it. Thank you for that summary. I think those are all really, really good tips. And I think especially because we've done these for a few years now. And I think when I talk to the people who come in, regardless of experience, it's those things that are the consistencies across the board. When I talk to the successful people, it's the massive and perfect action. It's being responsible, right. Keeping overhead. It's doing consistent marketing. It's using DealMachine. And all of those things, I think, are very commonalities across the board. Right. So I love that. So let's do questions for just a few minutes here. Yeah. Well, I know, again, we're 16 minutes over on your time. I appreciate it a lot.
Oh, you're good. You're good. Let's get into questions. I'd love to help anyone I can. Fire your questions into the Q&A only section, and I will knock them out. And I want to give a quick shout out to 4 people. I saw Claire Cooper. She's a local real estate agent in Augusta. Thanks for coming. Amy Myers, my sister's in Charlotte, North Carolina. I saw her on the list. David Leverett, a friend of mine from church, also coming here tonight. And then Nat Newsom recording for Chris Honeycutt, a good friend of mine that lives in my neighborhood. So thank all you guys that are local Augustans. I appreciate you. Thanks for being here.
Awesome. So, and well, I appreciate all you guys being here as well. Thank you. And to share the story.
So we'll start off with David Lelix, not to be confused with David Lecco, the CEO of DealMachine. Yeah, this could be an imposter. This could be David Lecco trying to pull a fast one on us. How often do you drive your areas? I do think we drive basically. First of all, we have a small MSA. This is not like Indianapolis. There's like 400,000 people in our 30-mile radius of our city, Augusta. So I think for us to drive, the real question is how long does it take to drive 222 subdivisions and 406 streets and 15 quadrants? And it took us about 3 to 4 months. with a part-time team member who all they did was drive 20 hours a week. So we did that, and then we've repeated that. So I think to me, the advice I've gotten from DealMachine and from some of the big wigs at DealMachine is just do it every 6 months. Great question, David. Thanks so much. And we know it's really David Lecco.
Yeah. Hey, just while we pull the next question up, I realized that I might not have been sharing my screen earlier. Yeah. So although I'm trying to share it now, and it's not coming up for you guys, right?
It's not coming up. It's for me, it's the fourth button on the top center where it says turn screen share on. Diane, great question. Yes, we have migrated out of Augusta, not out of our market per se, but a 30-mile radius from Augusta is a total of about 13 zip codes. So one of the things that DealMachine, again, helped me scale with is when I decided I wanted to add in more zip codes because I wanted to grow as a company. I had my marketing budget. The money in my marketing checking account kept growing and growing. The way I was able to continue to spend all that money and to grow exponentially was through adding in other zip codes in my MSA. So good question. Why didn't I flip deal 5? Okay, deal 5 was Mulberry Creek. So the guy that actually flipped that, the cash buyer I sold it to, I bought it for 170. He bought it for me for 185. I made 15. I think he spent like 15 or 20 on it and sold it for 265. It just sold a month ago. Why didn't I flip it? Because I'm dumb. I mean, that's all I can say. I should have flipped it. Barbara, great question. What's our conversion ratio? So we define a lead as anyone who raises their hand and says, I'm the owner and I would like an offer on my property. And we average a lead. I don't know how this compares to DealMachine's overall stats, but 0.2%. So that's 1 in every 500 postcards that we send. Someone calls in and says, I'd like an offer on my property. So that would be, I guess you could qualify that as our postcard to lead ratio. And I've defined how we define lead. And then if you're asking for conversion ratio on actual sales appointments we go on, that's a different calculation. We're probably in the 20 to 25% range. So if you were wondering, what you're probably wondering is how many postcards would I need to send to get my first deal? And if you used our metrics and we closed every 5th deal we went on, you'd have to send, bear with me, there's a lot of math here, 2,500 postcards would get you 5 leads, and you go on one of those, you close one of those 5 leads that you get an appointment on. So 2,500 postcards, what is that? 50 cents a pop, that's $1,250. Our average deal size, nobody asked that, but our average deal size is $19,800. So you can do the math. It's obviously well worth it. And our cost, we have some other factors that go into our cost, but our current total cost per deal. So if you take postcards, which we spend, now we're spending $23,000+ a month on, all with DealMachine, and you add in some texting and some ringless voicemails, and you look at the number of deals we do about 5 deals a month. Our total cost per deal in our off-market division, which is our direct-to-seller marketing division, is last year it was $2,808. This year it's $4,250. So as we've scaled, of course, our cost to do closed deals has risen dramatically, but it's the cost of doing business. And as long as you can keep your deal size at $19,000, you can maintain a healthy margin, still afford, beyond your marketing costs, you can still afford to pay for overhead and an acquisitions manager's commission and that kind of thing. So hopefully that answers your question.
I think that's a good one. And what I would add to that is that's also in a market that has been the most competitive market in like potentially like real estate history. What we've seen across the area. So cost of acquisition, cost of deals are at an all-time high. I think we'll see some interesting trends over the next couple of years on that as interest rates rise and things catch up. It'll still be interesting.
Yeah.
Still super competitive though.
So Dave, great question. I appreciate your question. His question is about, he says, I have no problems getting deals and flipping them's no problem, but I need investors. What he really means is private money lenders that'll help me on my first deal. Do you have any suggestions? Okay, so I'm going to pull up a private money lender list. I'm not going to show you the names, but I am going to show you the occupations. And I think if I were to post this into the comments, this will maybe jog your memory of people that you could potentially target in your world that would, they've got a net worth of 3 to 5 million, and for them to lend $100,000 is not, it's not a big commitment for them. So let's paste this in and see how it comes through. Okay. CPAs, parents, college roommates, car dealers, chiropractors, sales trainers, dermatologists, top real estate agents, orthodontists, owners of big and small businesses, corporate executives, presidents of local banks, oral surgeons, and pharmacists. Those are some of the people that I target when I'm raising private money. I didn't raise private money for the first 10 years. I think I didn't really mention this, but I basically cash flowed all the down payments with my wife and my income. And then ultimately, I bought a 40-unit apartment complex 3 years ago, and that really challenged me to raise $100,000 from 3 different people. And when I needed to put together that list, that is the list I put together right there. And I hope that helps you. Great question.
That's awesome list.
What do I pay my drivers? Diane, great question. We are nowhere near as expensive as David Lecco, but you guys are in a major metropolitan area. I think David's $20 an hour, 15, 20, 25. We are more in the $12 an hour range, 10, 12, maybe $14 an hour. We don't pay an incentive on closed deals, and we do pay a mileage reimbursement. We pay the standard IRS mileage reimbursement. You could Google that. I think it's maybe 58 cents a mile. It actually ends up working out that we pay the driver in hourly compensation. He gets as much through mileage reimbursement as he does through his hourly wage on his paycheck. So anyway, great question. Hope that answered it. Want to send those. What's your advice on getting this going? I do have a healthy budget. Bear with me. Oscar, reading your question. Oscar Covarrubias says, I want to send mailers. I would pick a template on DealMachine, either the box template or the simple one I showed earlier. And I would start mailing to the most distressed homes. And I don't know what healthy budget means, but again, they just made y'all an offer tonight where you can, get a $300 credit and start off with that. So I would say whatever your healthy budget is, kind of start spending $250 to $500 a month on postcards, right? That'll get you a decent amount of postcards out, 500 to 1,000 a month. And again, that's exactly what I said at the beginning of my story, which is I pulled a list of 2,000 names and I mailed 2,000 letters a month for 3 months. It cost me about $6,000. So Great question. I hope that answers that for you.
Yeah. And maybe one more, but I think I want to go and call it a night for us. Again, I really appreciate Paul for your time.
Yeah.
I know we can answer questions for days too. And just know if there's DealMachine related questions, like DealMachine support is there 9 to 9 every single day. Josh@DealMachine.com is my email address. You can email me and I will answer and redirect to the best resource for you if there's someone else on our team, but we'll make sure you get the answers that you need. Again, if you look at the offers tab, you can see and access the offer that we have here live for a few more minutes. Well, thank you everyone so much for being here. I hope it was helpful. Paul, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you, Paul.
Appreciate you very much so and sharing, because I think it's these stories that help some people get over the humps, get over the fear, get over the next step that they need. And so you taking this action probably is going to affect a lot of people's lives tonight and hopefully moving forward. So thank you so much.
Well, I'm grateful to you guys. Again, I said it at the beginning, but I just appreciate Elise, Josh, of course, David, Krista, Rochelle, Joy, everyone that has helped me and spent time with me. I'm just very grateful and honored to have had a partnership with you guys. And I know that I would not have accomplished the success that I've had without you guys. And I appreciate y'all's willingness to kind of work with me through that process and continue to help me grow and scale. Again, if it weren't for y'all, I would not have been able to grow the business over the last 12 months the way that I have. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we are truly thankful for you, and it has been a pleasure to watch your journey and be a part of that.
Awesome. Yep. I'm along for the ride and grateful.
Likewise. Well, everyone, happy deal finding is our normal sign off. So we'll say happy deal finding.
Happy deal finding.
Happy deal finding.
And good luck, everybody.